52% of people around the world are not happy in their job. It has never been easier to make a living doing something that you enjoy doing. I'm not interested in your academic career. I'm not interested in the next 4 to 5 years. I'm interested in the next 40 to 50 years of your actual career. Young adults who are going into college now and high schoolers, they're going to live to be 100. They're going to be working way past 65.
Wow, that's an interesting future.
Gone are the days of you finish high school or finish college and you go into a job and that's what you do until the day you retire.
I don't think people will find it really amusing to work till 75.
You've been stuck for 4 years doing something that you don't want to be doing, rather than spending $300-400 over a couple of sessions to really give yourself real insight and direction where you have an interest in it, where there's a demand for it, and where you have the ability for it. That's the start. Actually, a lot of career guidance counselors and career coaches, they use our software.
I did the test. I went on Career Fit. I did the quiz. It was a great quiz because hello, everybody. Today with me on the My Career Shop podcast is Stephen Shortt, a career and talent strategist and the CEO of Career Fit, a company dedicated to making the world a better place with happy people in fulfilling and rewarding careers. Career Fit believes in the transformative power of finding the right career, one that aligns with an individual's interests, abilities, and aspirations. Thank you for coming on to the podcast, Stephen, and just excited to have you and learn about how do you help people find the career fit.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks very much for having me. So what we do at Career Fit, what we want to do is to help people find their ideal career. So what is the career that is going to give them a sense of fulfillment? They're going to feel rewarded. They're going to enjoy coming into work. Now, I don't claim to say that you're going to enjoy every second of every hour of your job, because at the end of the day, every job is a job. There are bits of it that, yeah, we have to do even if we don't want to. That's why they pay us to do it. But really, one of the statistics that really bothers me is consistent for decades now is around 60% of your time is spent either at work or thinking about work. That's normal. Like your waking time, 60% of it, you're either working or you're thinking about work. If you're an entrepreneur or a business leader or something like that, it tends to be a little bit higher. But 52% of people around the world are not happy in their job. And that is, so more than half the world are spending more than half their time not feeling happy and fulfilled and rewarded. So the world is so big. It has never been easier to make a living doing something that you enjoy, doing something that appeals to you, because there have never been such diversity of careers at any point in history. So really being able to figure out what it is that you want. At the same time, I'm not saying that you might not need to maybe take a step backwards for a year or two, or if you're going in a new direction, and that can be tough. I mean, I'm not saying blasé, you don't like what you're doing, change, because there's work involved in it and there can be real challenges in it. But if you're going to be spending your days for the next 30, 40, 50 years doing something that you're not happy doing, my advice would be to change.
That is good advice. But before we go everywhere, I looked at your LinkedIn profile. I saw that you've done a lot. Firstly, you had like 33 lines of experience. So from being an investor in multiple companies, an entrepreneur, speaker, author, and now CEO, you've already been a CEO of multiple companies, but now CEO of Career Fit. I just love to get the backstory of how you went from all these ventures to wanting to help people find their careers.
So I grew up in 2 family businesses. One was an English language school, which is on my LinkedIn. I bought that from my folks 10 years before we sold. And then I bought this business, which is the psychometrics. This was more of a services industry. I wanted to change it more into products and community building. So there's adjustment and building as we scaled through the generations. But because I grew up in an entrepreneurial family, I've always had this sense of, I don't want to swear on your podcast, so I'll just go, oh, okay, go for it, as opposed to whatever else you want to say. So like, there's always been this sense of, okay, give something a go, give it a try. So some of the things that I've done, they've been projects that have lasted for a year or two or shorter or longer. There's others where I've been involved in a variety of different networks where I take on different leadership roles or different positions, between the Global Student Entrepreneur Awards to Director of Leadership for the Entrepreneurs Organization, things like that, where I step up Predominantly to learn about myself and my own things. Obviously, giving back and doing something for the good of the community, but I'm doing it from a slightly selfish point of view as well. I want to experience this. I want to learn how to lead this kind of a team, or I want to learn how to engage on this international level or something like that. And it has every time I've put myself forward for something, I've gained something in return from when I'm giving back. That really is where most of that came from. But also setting something up, doing a project, seeing how it works, putting it on pause if it's not really working, or if I don't have the bandwidth, if I'm doing too many things at the moment, and putting stuff on pause and just going, okay, I'm not going to shut it down, because I still think that in the next 5 years I'll be able to build a smaller team around it, and go at it again.
Mm. So, how did you go about into helping people find a career? Like, how did that journey start?
So I was involved in the language school, and I was mostly in the marketing side of things. So I did
Oh,
the
okay.
meeting with the clients, selling the business, selling the courses, traveling around the world. I had a fantastic time traveling to countries all over the world to do the marketing, to do the presentations, to work with agents, to work with clients, and all the rest of it. But then, as I kind of came up through the organization, got more involved in the leadership, more involved in the management, more involved in the ownership, I started to work through the Simon Sinek Start with Why. Like, when the first time I saw Simon Sinek Start with Why, it really resonated with me, because I'd always had this question of, there's a million things in this world, there's a million ways in this world to make money, some legal, some not so legal. Why are we choosing to do this? Why is it that we're spending our time and energy doing this? And I needed to have kind of more than just this thing of, we need to make money.
Mhm.
And what I really discovered is, in the language business, our target audience was more the executive side of things, and people who were looking to use English to learn, improve their English so as they could get a better job when they went back to Spain, Italy, Brazil, Japan, Korea, wherever. Um, so it wasn't a kind of a holiday thing. It was very much a developing themselves. So it was actually using it for their careers to get them a better job. And the market in Ireland was moving a little bit away from that and more towards a bit of a race to the bottom for working holiday type people. And they weren't really as interested in the language. They were more interested in being able to work part time and wanting to do as little of the English as possible. And it really started to not resonate with me. But I didn't have the words for it. I wasn't able to articulate why that was. Because even though I've grown up with a career guidance counselor as a father, an occupational psychologist who is the founder of this business, everything was about marketing, communications, business. It wasn't necessarily about the values. It was about the interests from a career point of view. And then when I went through the Start with Why stuff, I really was like, oh, these are my interests. These are the areas that I'm good at. These are the things that I like doing. These are the things I don't mind doing. And these are the things I don't like doing. And it really started to coalesce in this sense of, I want to help people to help themselves. That was kind of the first iteration of my current mission, or the way that I currently describe my mission, is I wanted to help people to help themselves. And I didn't want to make widgets. I didn't necessarily want to be doing one-to-one coaching. I wanted to be doing stuff, building frameworks, building options, building training courses that could be delivered digitally, that could be delivered by franchise, whatever it was, to help people to help themselves. And the language business wasn't fulfilling that anymore.
Mm.
It was when I couldn't articulate it, but I could feel it. But then when
Mhm.
it wasn't anymore, I was starting to really look for, why is this not appealing to me anymore? And then the really looking at the psychometrics, personality profile, the selection, the career fit, and all the other things that we do here in ETC Consult, it was more in line with what I wanted to be doing, so long as I was able to build it out to be less of the individual one-to-one coaching and more of the systems. And that's why I moved over to that, and why I decided to take over that business.
Well, that's awesome. So, tell me about career fit. Like, how does it actually help people? And like, what are you trying to like actually doing at a granular level in the business side?
So, well, first of all, Career Fit started because my father, who, as I said, is an occupational psychologist who worked with people for 40 years on career guidance, he really noticed that a lot of people on the lower end of the academic spectrum and the socioeconomic spectrum were really ignored by a lot of these places. So if you were a very practical student and weren't interested in going to college or university, the assessments were like, oh, well, we don't know what to do with you. And he saw that as a real failing, because a lot of people who are very practical can have very fulfilling, very rewarding, very profitable careers. You don't have to be a PhD to be successful in this world.
Hmm.
So he started building Career Fit as a pen and paper. So we got it tested in a couple of places, including practical universities. We even got it tested in prisons, in different places for people who had not completed their academics, for example, to be able to show them what options they had. Then we started building it out into all walks of life. So it's from the very practical right up to STEM careers and future rocket scientists and things like that. Then over COVID, we rebuilt everything from the ground up from a tech point of view. So we rebuilt the software. And now what it does is, instead of just looking at, oh, these are the career families, these are the broad areas, we're able, because when it was pen and paper, there was a limit to how much granular stuff you can do. Now that we have this algorithm built, it takes the individual answers, not just the broad answers from your interest inventory, nails those down against your interests, sorry, your abilities, verbal, numerical, abstract reasoning, which is known as your general ability. And it maps that against 1,270 careers that we have in our database that exist in the world. And it picks out the top 16 for you based on what you're interested in and what you're good at. We then
Mm.
have a description for each of those careers, so as you fully understand it, so as you actually know, okay, this is not a romanticized version of this, which is thing. Teacher is one of these that gets a lot of people to have a romanticized version of what it is to be a teacher, and then they get into teaching and they're like, this is not what I want. This is not what I signed up for.
Yeah.
So we have real world explanations of all of these careers, what it takes to do well in them, and then how to go about it. So what kinds of courses you should be looking at, what kinds of subjects you should be studying. And for adults, we are building out a whole module on how to take the experience that you already have and apply it to changing into this new career if you're not already in it. So that's what we do. If anybody wants to know about that ideal career framework, you can go to findingyoridealcareer.com, and all of that, the breakdown of how to do all that is there. It's a free pay. You don't have to subscribe or download anything. It's just findingyoridealcareer.com.
Awesome. That is cool. So I did the test. I went on Career Fit. I did the quiz. It was a great quiz because a lot of the matches, they were in the legal world, entrepreneurial and business world, and sports fitness and physical therapy. And these are all things that I thought fit me. They reflect my life pretty well. So it was a great quiz, firstly. And so you've already mentioned that you have an algorithm, and that's how you narrow the selection of careers of 1270. Is there any AI used in this?
No, currently there's not, because this is all based on our experience, real world experience of sitting on both sides of the recruitment table. Because we help companies with selection across the board, across all ranges of industries. So we know what it takes to do well in each of these careers, and we have the experience of the career guidance. So we're actually matching on real world examples. We do use AI a little bit to standardize descriptions of the career. So we write them, and then AI makes sure that they're all the same size. So it's not like one is not 6 paragraphs long, another is 2 paragraphs long. So we make sure we have standardized stuff. And we are looking at building an AI companion that goes along with it, that acts like somebody who you can bounce ideas off, which will be able to access the web. But then the idea will be that you then go and talk to a career guidance counselor properly once you have a little bit of that work done before.
Cool, cool. So Career Fit, like it, like on the website, at least, I'm not sure, but you do more than just a career quiz, right? I noticed there were guidance counselors. So, what other services do you provide at Career Fit?
So Career Fit is the report. If you are a career guidance counselor, we can set you up to have your own account where you can manage invitations to your clients. So as you get the reports in, and then you can start having those conversations. The same way as we set up schools. So in Ireland, all high schools have a career guidance counselor, and they are able to manage their students. So instead of them having to have really painful conversations, maybe over 1 or 2 sessions, where they're trying to find out the interests, they're trying to find out the aptitudes of each of these students, CareerFit does all the heavy lifting for them. So when they sit down with the students, they can actually do the bit that career guidance counselors enjoy, which is having those deeper conversations and really helping to guide the student, or to help the student to discover their own path. So all of that is done for the career guidance counselor with this assessment, and the dashboard allows them to manage all that in one easy place.
Wow, that's smart. Is there an ideal age that you would recommend for people to start the whole career discovery process?
We kind of say 16 is a good minimum age, because younger than 16, I have a 15-year-old daughter who hasn't done the assessment yet. Really, it's because you need kind of 16-ish to have a little bit of life experience to understand if this is a big part of your job, that you would enjoy doing it, that you have some kind of a concept of what you enjoy doing, from more than watching TV and looking at TikTok, for example. So you do need to have a little bit more experience. Now, we're toying with the idea in schools anyway of allowing people to retake the interest inventory after a year, because they might at between 16 and 17. And we notice it with clients, but I've noticed it in very dramatically with my own daughter, my eldest daughter. She did it when she was kind of 16 and a half, and then she did it again when she was 17, because really the life experiences that she had had between then and those 2 years between school trips and starting going out with a different cohort of friends and getting exposure to different ideas, gave her a different perspective. So this can adapt a little bit over time.
So after 16, you would say?
Absolutely, 16 is really the minimum that we would recommend to do
Okay.
this.
So that was actually one of my next questions. I was wondering because, when I was in high school, I understood my interests, my hobbies, but skills, I feel like I was more aware about my skills and everything once I entered the workforce and I don't feel like if you asked the high school version of me, I'd be able to effectively answer the questions that would lead me towards appropriate career discovery. You know what I mean?
hmm So this is more about where the appropriate careers are, is more about your interests.
Okay.
Because I mean, skills can be taught. You don't know, when you're in high school, you didn't know how to code software. But if you had interests in computers and interests in creating and manufacturing video game architecture, if you're World of Warcraft or something like that, you could actually have quite an interest in coding. You just don't know that that's a skill that you can develop, but you have an interest in that area.
Hmm.
What we do is, because we map the interest in what's actually involved in the job as opposed to what I think is involved in the job, that's how we're able to show people, even if they haven't thought of those ideas, if they haven't thought, I never even imagined that that would be something for me, because it pulls out their interests. And that's something that I don't think there's any other assessment that does that.
Mm, mm. Yeah, I mean, I do a lot of career tests. I don't know how they actually work in the back end. Yours was a really good one, so I'd recommend it.
Thank you very much. There was one, I won't say the name of the university, but a university in the US, they were trialing it out recently, and they gave it to the career guidance counselors in the university. And they gave it to I think it was the nephew of one of them as a trial. Like, it was just, he was the right age and he was in the college, and they said, oh, we'll just trial it out with these guys. And the report came back, and it had two different distinct groups. Like, you could see the groupings. There was either, I think it was computers, and it was more esoteric marketing stuff. And they came back, they had this conversation, and go, oh, this must be wrong, because it's showing two really different things. Like, they're not all the same thing. So I said, well, sit down with the guy, have a chat to them, because the human psyche, like, we have lots of different interests. And the guy said, yeah, I'm currently studying the computer side of things, because that's where I think, and where my family thinks that I will get the job. So I have an interest in that, but that's what I'm studying. But if I had no responsibilities or anything like that, where I'd love to go is in that area of the marketing and the other side of things. So they were amazed that it pulled out the two sides of his personality. The thing is, the young people today, young adults who are going into college now and high schoolers now, they're going to live to be 100. They're going to be working way past 65.
Mhm.
So they're going to have 3, 4, 5 full time careers, like fulfilling and rewarding careers. And it can be feeding into very different aspects of their interest and their personality, depending on their stage of life. Gone are the days of you finish high school or finish college and you go into a job and that's what you do until the day you retire. There's so much to explore now, and it has never been easier to find a way of doing something you enjoy doing.
Wow. I mean, I don't think people will find it really amusing to work till 75, you know?
Well, I actually do, because if you've got, I mean, I'm not saying that you're going to be working at 60 to 70. You're not going to be working maybe with the same intensity as you were in your
Yeah.
20s and 30s when you're building stuff up. And you could be doing something vastly different that is a much more relaxing, much more engaging, not as maybe emotionally or mentally taxing or long hours. I am a big believer that by the time My daughters, who are teenagers now, by the time they're really settled into their careers in their 40s and 50s, 40s, I'd say, I really see a 4-day work week being the norm for everybody, because I think AI is going to help us get stuff done much quicker. Where companies are going to be able to say, "Well, I'll pay you for a 4-day work week instead of because I can get stuff done in the 4 days." That also means that people are going to be able to have portfolio careers and side hustles, and people will be able to work their 9 to 5, Monday to Thursday, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, they can have their Etsy store or their coaching or their YouTube or their whatever else they can do, where they don't even need to have all of the pressure of that being their full-time job. If that's their awesome holiday income and other bits and pieces that allows them to have that extra spending money while all of the bills are paid from the day-to-day job, that gives people a lot more flexibility and freedom.
Wow. That's an interesting future. I see it happening in most of the world. I think America's going to be a little slow to it, to the 4-day week, because it's all about getting more
So
out
funny, I
here.
had this conversation. If that does happen, and if people are able to get more done quicker, instead of giving people a day off, companies are going to make employees work an extra day and get more done. Like instead of doing 3 projects in 5 days, and they can do 3 projects in 4 days, now they're going to do 4 projects in 5 days, and maximize and maximize. And I think, yes, the capitalistic view is that's what's going to happen. But I think we've seen a real sea change in how people are looking at the workplace. I mean, how many people, JP Morgan announced that everybody's back to work, and there's so many people. Like, I know people in JP Morgan, and I've seen all of the messages on X and all these places, people going, I'm gone, I'm not going back because I don't want to sit in traffic for 3 hours a day. I did coaching recently with a fairly senior person in a very heavily regulated financial institution here, who before COVID, he was driving an hour and 15 minutes, an hour and 30 minutes in, and an hour and 30 minutes back every day. No problem. It was the norm.
Yeah,
He now is only in the office 2 days a week, and he hates it.
yeah,
And he's
yeah.
like, he's 2 or 3 years to retirement, and he's on the track, and he's like, I'm not going anywhere else, but I'm not breaking my neck for this company. So I think it's not necessarily going to be the companies that will start to say, okay, well, we'll give you the 4 days. I think there will be a wave of societal pressure to go, look, this is the way it's going.
Mm, mm. Let's see. America, I mean, Donald Trump just announced that all federal government
Hmm.
employees are coming back 5 days a week into the office. So, I mean, even at my workplace, they first started off with come in to the office as you please. Then it went to 3 day. Then it went to 4 day. And so slowly, it's going in the other direction. Although I don't know how many people actually comply. Obviously, we don't have metrics for that yet, but it's going to be interesting. We'll see what the next 5 years look like, and I hope ideally it gets to the 4 day because yeah, it gives you a lot more time to do other things.
But I mean,
So
I'm
let's see.
not saying that it's going to happen necessarily, even in that it's going to be the norm in our working year, in our working lifetime.
Yeah,
But by the time my girl's in I don't know, 25, 30 years, I think it will be, because I think society will have moved to it.
yeah. I think someone in Europe's going to start the trend, and then we're going to follow suit.
There are a couple of countries that have already started experimenting with it.
Yeah, Sweden did.
Yeah.
So, all right. So back in 2024, 2025 now, sorry. So there's a student, they're 17 years old, like you said. What would you recommend the steps are that they take to discover the ideal career path?
So I have this acronym of IDEAL. So your interests, the demand that's out there, and your abilities. So that's the aid part. So then, if you can imagine a Venn diagram between ID and A, so what are your interests, what's the demand, and what are your abilities. So if you are interested in your job, interested in something, and you're able to do it, but there's no demand, that's a hobby. If you have the ability to do something and there's a demand for it, but you're just not interested, that's a job.
Hmm.
If you have the interest in doing something and there is a demand for it, but you don't have the ability, that's a dream. Now, all of these you can move, and you can develop the ability for it. You can train really hard, and you can put in all the work, and you can do everything else, and you might be able to get to that ability. If you are in a job, you can start to find things that you enjoy doing, and you can raise your interest. And if it's a hobby that you like doing, you might be able to find a big enough market to be able to to find a demand. But where those three intersect, that's your ideal career path. So that's where you have an interest in it, where there's a demand for it, and where you have the ability for it. That's the start, and that's what career fit gives you. That's 16 careers that are ideally located in that sweet spot. Then
Mm,
you have the circle around it, which is the E, the enthusiasm. Once you go through those 16 careers, which one are you most excited about? So there's some that will appeal to you more at this stage in your life. There's some that might be like, oh, that's kind of interesting, but yeah, I'm not so excited about it right now. I really like the sound of that. But you might go, I really like that, but maybe not right now. Maybe I'll come back to that in 10 years' time. But right now, I want to do number 12. Then that's idea. And then the L is the lenses. So you look at it through the lens of leadership, lifestyle, learning, and leadership, lifestyle, learning. Okay. The other one is, I'll remember the other one in a second. So the lifestyle, does it fit your lifestyle? Or longevity? That's the other one. Lifestyle, does it fit your day to day? Like, is this something that you could see yourself doing? It might require at the beginning working 10 hours a day to get yourself up there, or is it something that allows you to travel or whatever? Does it fit your lifestyle? Leadership, do you see yourself being in a leadership position, or do you see yourself being a team member, and how does that play out and how does that appeal to you? Longevity, do you see this as a part-time gig, a stepping stone to something else, or do you see yourself really going, actually, I could see myself in the next 5 to 10 years still being in this industry, enjoying doing what I'm doing? And then learning, do you want to spend the time getting better at this role? If you can answer all of those questions in the positive in a way that appeals to you, then that is your ideal career. And
mhm.
that's how people can find it. You don't like career fit will give you that 16 careers to help you catapult it, but you can do this exercise yourself. Like, you can go through all of these, researching all of the different careers, looking at your interests, sitting down with people and going through it. You don't have to spend the $60 to get the report if you don't want to, and you can follow the same process. Career fit will just help give you a head start on that.
Um, that's interesting. So, do you find if you're going to do the exercise independently, do you like where's the value? Like, would you? So there's so much information you can get out there. You
Mhm.
can get a career coach. You can get a career guidance counselor.
Absolutely.
So, do you find people would rather fill out a career quiz or and find a career fit, or would they rather speak to someone and that like a guidance counselor or someone else to help them navigate this entire journey? And like, what would you recommend there?
So I always, cause my communication is one of my big things. So I'm always in favor of talking about it and exploring it. But there's a lot of people who aren't. But actually, a lot of career guidance counselors and career coaches, they use our software. So what they do is they actually get the student to fill out those, or the individual to fill out the report. They get the report, and then they talk them through that. So because it does so much heavy, it saves so many hours. That's what we do. But the report is biased. I think it's amazing because it gives you the 16 careers and the description, but you still then have to go do something about it. It's not okay, there's a report, now I'm going to sit here and the world will magically change around me. You've still got to do the work. You've still got to get out there and make those decisions and put yourself out there and put yourself forward for different roles. So working with a coach is a fantastic way of having somebody hold you accountable for the things that you say you want to do. And I think it's a
Mhm.
phenomenal way to, we let ourselves off the hook all the time. I mean, we all know, a friend of mine has a great line. We all know what it takes to have a six pack. We all know how to have a six pack. We don't all have six packs.
Mhm.
But when we get coaches and when we get personal trainers and things like that, we start to be held accountable for the things that we want to do. So it's the same in a career. When you know where you want to go, that's brilliant. But that's just the start of the journey. That's
Mhm.
like a map is a measurable action plan. Deciding on your career, that's brilliant. You know where you want to go, but you're not there. So you've got to figure out your route to it. And working with somebody who has the experience of helping people in that situation, like a career coach, is an ideal way of being able to help yourself get there.
Yeah, because there's we live in a time where information is democratized. You can go out there, you can Google stuff. The advent of AI has made things so easy and accessible,
Hmm.
although not always accurate, but it's helped a lot. Um, so that's why I was wondering because I feel the same way. Like whenever I have a question, I try my best to get in touch with somebody that knows and just talk to them because although you can get the information online, you don't know how to ask intelligent questions. until you speak to somebody that's like well versed in that area. And then
Mhm.
all of a sudden you're like, "Oh, I thought I knew what I was talking about." And then, they'll start poking at questions, and it'll make you think in a way where you just wouldn't have gotten there yourself.
Mhm.
And if you did get there yourself, like you said, it would have taken you like weeks, whereas somebody can just ask one or two questions and they'll probe you in the right direction. So
Mhm.
I'm pretty big on um, getting getting the help of somebody because I'm always in a rush, right? And
Mhm.
so I feel like time is so important, and I'm gonna end up wasting like weeks rather than talking to this one person and within half an hour. Um, so for me, it's
Uh,
always that time. Like, what is my time worth? And I'll just pay for things and just
the
get them.
worst. So even with that, I mean, for people who might have disposable income enough to be able to spend a couple of $100 on a couple of sessions with career guidance counselors and things like that, I meet a lot of people who when I tell them what I do and they're like, "Oh yeah, that's great. Yeah, I don't know if I'd spend that money. I just figure it out." It's like, okay, but how long have you been unhappy in your job? Like, "Oh, I don't really like what I'm doing, but I'll figure it out." It's like you've been stuck for 4 years doing something that you don't want
Yeah.
to be doing,
Hmm.
rather than spending $300-400 over a couple of sessions to really give yourself real insight and direction.
Yeah.
You might figure it out, and I absolutely hope that you do, because I don't want people to be miserable in their job,
Yeah.
and you can figure it out. But
Hmm.
like you say, if you're able to access experts who have that knowledge, who have that ability to point you in the right direction for you, and you accelerate your career by decades,
Yeah.
it's to me it's a no-brainer.
Yeah. I think like it's so one thing that's like underscored is people don't realize the value of time, and sometimes like they take like 3 years making a decision, and in those 3 years they could have literally almost started a completely new track, right?
Mhm.
And so I'm always trying to push people go faster, faster, faster. I'm notorious for this, um but anyways, like on that note, do you find that most people that utilize career discovery services are high school students or like people in career transitions and stuff like that?
No, it's a real mixture. Our experience has been a real mixture. We get a lot of high school students who are deciding what to study because they don't want to, they're not sure what they want to do. But I'd say 50% of our business for the last 40 years has also been people who were on the wrong track, or in Ireland in particular, maybe less so, this particular problem less so in the last 10 years, but before that it was people who have been told, go into tech, go into software development, go into IT, because that's where all of the jobs are going to be in the future, and everybody was funneled into that. I did a course in IT for a while, and then I switched to marketing because it just the IT, I knew that IT wasn't for me, like the coding wasn't for me. But there's people who got stuck in that, and they come into our office and they're like, I am just a half a step ahead of my boss. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm Googling everything just 10 minutes before the boss comes in. I'm miserable. I hate it. I want to change. I want to do something completely different. And sometimes so we have one of the options is a career discussion. We have people who just want to have a discussion around what's they have in their mind, and that's fine. And they just want to have that. It's like having a coffee with somebody.
Hmm.
But most people come in and they go, look, I don't know what I want to do. I have a couple of ideas. And we run them through the whole battery of assessments. We do the talks and the coaching and everything else. And then we give them a lot of different ideas. I mean, we had one not so long ago, a lady who studied architecture, was doing architecture, and had this grand idea that she was going to be building these beautiful houses. But because nobody really told her that the majority of architecture work is figuring out where the pipes go and working on renovations and dealing with people in their homes, and it's not the same as she thought. So what we were able to do with her is, okay, we went through a couple of things, and she had great reasoning abilities, she had great communication skills, she was really interested in this, really interested in that, really interested in the other. And one of the careers that we recommended for her was a virtual set designer for video games. And it was one of those things that she never thought of, because it's not her job to know these 1,270 odd careers that exist in the world. The
Yeah.
same way career guidance counselors, they've no, like in schools, they have limited time with students. And how are they supposed to keep up to date with what a telemedicine doctor is, what a drone operator actually does, what a cryptocurrency miner is, all of this kind of stuff. They struggle to keep up with a lot of that stuff. So again, all of that heavy lifting is done. They could read the report before the day before they sit down with the student and learn what each of those careers are and then talk to them about it,
Hmm.
because what they're trying to get from the student or the client is, what about that description resonates with you? Why does it resonate with you? And then let's get moving onto that path. The example I
So,
give, sorry, you
oh,
just mentioned students there. What jumped into my mind is the worst well-meaning advice that parents and teachers can give to students, in my opinion, is, well, you're good at this subject, so that's what you should study in college, with
mm,
no regard to what they'll actually enjoy doing as a career. What I tell students is, I'm not interested in your academic career. I'm not interested in the next 4 to 5 years of your academic career. I'm interested in the next 40 to 50 years of your actual career.
mm,
If we use politics as an example, you mentioned the new president in the US who's making a couple of changes. You could have a student who's really passionate about politics and they really are into politics, but they would be miserable if they actually worked in politics. What they would be better off doing is finding the bits of what is appealing about politics. And they could be in marketing, for example, or communications. And they could go and be an amazing marketing manager for a big tech firm and being able to really showcase some great work that's being done, have all of the interests being satisfied by what they're actually doing. But then because they still have a social interest in politics, they can get involved in local politics, they can support their local favored politicians and things like that with the experience that they have without having to be in politics. So understanding the interest that you have doesn't necessarily mean that that's the job you should do. It's, what are the characteristics of the interest and what are the characteristics of the job and how can we match those?
so where do you find most people start getting interested in this journey, right? The reason why I'm wondering is because you would think that the people that benefit the most from this would be high school students, like in
Hmm.
their final years, right? But I'm under the impression, and so I have a young niece, I have young cousins, and I talk to them, they're not as interested, right? So do you find that people start doing the career discovery journey after they start something and then they're like, "Oh, I hate this. I need a change," or like because you already have data, right?
Yep.
So do like you said that 50%, but I didn't actually catch the answer. Where do you actually find most of your market?
So when we were doing the so as I said, originally we were service based, so we did a lot of one-to-one coaching and career guidance. That's where I got 50%, about half were adults who had worked for a few years after college who decided they didn't like doing what they were doing. The other half were people going into college. So we kind of had a bit of a glut between 22 and 26 years of age. We didn't really get many of that, but 26 and up, and then 16 to 19 going into college or a year in college and deciding. So they were the two areas where we got most of our business. But as I said, now that I'm changing the business to be a little bit less about the one-to-one coaching, more about the community in the building. But um, what was the other question? The other part of
Uh,
that question?
yeah, I was just wondering, like, when do people start getting getting interested in the career discovery process?
Yeah. So for themselves, it is that kind of a couple of years after college age where they've decided either A, I don't really like what I'm doing, I want to change, or B, I really like this. How can I progress? How can I get the career skills? Like, what are the direction? So I like engineering. What direct like engineering is enormous. What kind of area can I go and they can have a conversation about? The reason that I believe that teenagers and your young niece, for example, they have a difficulty, and I think we as kids used to have this difficulty as well, but to a less extent. Like the age old question of what do you want to be when you grow up?
Mhm.
Um, First of all, teenagers have very little idea of what's out there. And it's like
Mhm.
everybody wants to be a fireman or an astronaut or all these cool things. Now, though, there are so many options, and the young people see all of these different options on social media, and they actually have target confusion. They have no idea what they want to
Yeah.
be. Because the other thing, which is really important when you're dealing with young people, if you ask an 18-year-old and you say, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? You're asking them to take a mental image of projecting themselves out 5 years.
Yeah.
But if you project them back 5 years and see how much dramatic change has happened in their life since they were 13 to 18, you then want them to imagine that volume and magnitude of change in 5 years' time. They can't do it. It's an impossibility to ask. So it's, what do you want to do next? That's why something like Career Fit, which has the knowledge of, if you're interested in this, you're likely to be really successful in this. If you're interested and you have the ability, this is a great fit for you. And it's customized to them, because asking them to decide that, or to try and imagine themselves that far out, is nigh on impossible. Once they get to their mid 20s, they have more of a backlog of, okay, well, like the last 5 years, the last 8 years has been, I've seen these trends, I've noticed these different things. So it's easier for them to project themselves out.
Hmm.
But when we were younger, all we saw, like, there was far fewer careers.
Yeah.
The breadth of options weren't as varied as they are now. So there is target confusion in young people, and it's really cognitively difficult for them to imagine themselves 5 years
Yeah.
in the future.
And it's gotten a little bit even more confusing because now with AI, people are concerned whether this profession's going to dissipate,
Yeah,
or, it, too much choice makes
yeah,
choice difficult,
yeah.
right?
Target confusion. It's yeah.
I totally get that. I mean, the entire reason why I started this podcast was because I myself, I had an interesting career path journey, and I'm really grateful that I was pushed, at the right time, right? Like, had I not, so I'll give you a little bit of a brief synopsis. I graduated. I hated my bachelor's of science degree, right? I was working 3 jobs at the time as a furniture store manager. I worked at Best Buy at night, and I was part of a startup, and uh, and I was just working all day. And my brother-in-law
Mhm.
came home one day, and he was a strategic consultant, and he was like, "Omer, you're not going to last very long," and so he's like, "How much are you getting paid at least?" So I got all my checks. We put it together. I was earning like, I think, $2,800 a month or something back in '05, and he's like, that's nothing, right? And you're wasting your time. And so he was the one, we sat down, and how we did my career discovery journey was awful. But I'm still grateful. But we basically laid out 6 career paths, which was like medicine, dentistry, optometry, law, finance, and something else. And I went and I spoke to people in each one of these professions,
Mhm.
and I kind of volunteered a little bit in a few of them. I hated medicine, so I struck that out. And but think about it, I looked through 6 career paths, right? And then I elected to become a lawyer. I'm happy now. The career is tough, but and I'm very grateful that I actually went down that path, because had I not, I don't think I would have had the opportunities and everything that's opened up for me. That's why I started this project, because I think that this should be done better, right? And you shouldn't have to go through just 6 paths and make a decision from that. It should be a lot more educated, narrowed, and pointed. So
I'm actually very curious. So those paths, those 6 paths that you mentioned, like medicine, law, dentistry, very old school,
yeah,
traditional, kind of
yeah,
prestigious, money, safe paths.
yeah.
What was it, like, who came up with those six? And what
So
was it that was appealing about those six? Was it
so
just that they were money and safe, or was there something else?
So this is a South Asian thing, right? If you
Yeah,
if
okay.
you grow up around Pakistani, Indian people,
Yeah.
even like Arab people, they're just like pharmacists, doctors, medicine. Like it's just like ingrained in us to become. We're all supposed to be doctors at some point in our lives, right?
Mhm.
Because like the immigrant problem was when they came. Obviously, money was the biggest issue, right? They all have a very similar story. They came on a boat. They had $10 to their name, and they really struggled to earn. So they thought that they would be benefiting the next generation by putting them in a very beneficial position with respect to income, and
Mhm.
solely income. Like, this concept of fulfilling careers was not really a thought process back in the day, right? And so it was just about, how do you put like food on the table, right? And so that's where that stemmed from, those 6 career paths. Whenever I still speak to him, and his thought process has always been the same: how do you maximize dollars, right?
Hmm.
And what are your skills, right? And but when you talk to 16-year-olds, they don't know their skills. That's why I was asking you those questions,
Hmm.
right? Um, and so yeah, that's it just comes from, in my opinion, a scarcity mindset and trying to, address that.
I absolutely buy that. One of the things that I talk to parents about, so I mean, in Ireland, and traditionally it was you join the civil service, you get a government job, and that's your protected government life. You, no risk, and you get a pension, all the rest of it, and you're set. Same kind of idea. But what I do when I'm talking to parents now is I'm going, do you remember my generation when we were playing Mario Kart or we were playing like Nintendos and stuff, and our parents were like, "Oh, get off that! You're wasting your time. Your eyes, you'll go blind, and you're sitting too close to the TV. Get back to studying. Get back to studying." And now I show them photographs of esports competitions where they sell out arenas of people who are making huge money
Yeah,
being watched how to play video games. It has never been easier to make a living doing something that you enjoy doing.
yeah.
Podcasters, streamers, all of these people that are able to lean into what they're actually interested in and what they actually care about and
Hmm.
make a really decent living. And that's what I'm really passionate about.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, I mean, it's been great chatting with you, and I like to close off all my episodes with just, kind of picking on getting some good advice. So, I mean, you've done a lot in your life. What is some advice you would give to others seeking their career path?
Whether it's career path or anything, I would say your self awareness is really important. Like understanding who you are, what you're good at, what you're not good at, what you enjoy doing, what you don't enjoy doing, what you would like to learn, or what you don't have an interest in learning. Once you have that, you know where you're starting from. Because if you're on a map and you have a point, that's the mountain I'm climbing. If you don't actually know where you're starting, you can't plan to get to that point. So you need to know two things in a map: where you're going and where you're starting, because everything else is then manageable.
Hmm. That is incredible advice because now that I'm in my mid 30s, I find like if you lack self awareness, you don't even know where to start.
Mm.
Like you think that the problem is like A and it's actually problem like D or F,
Yeah.
right? And you're so off and you
Or
end
it
up
could it could even be problem six. It's
yeah.
not even a letter.
Exactly. And so being able to, be a little contemplative and reflective and have some
Hmm.
self-awareness, it like really helps with all of this stuff. Well, thank you so much, Stephen. Appreciate you taking out the time, sharing with us how to find the ideal career path. I should have probably had you as episode one because it would have helped everybody a lot more. And then, so because the usual is on each episode, I interview somebody from a different career path, right?
Hmm.
So if I had you as episode one, you would helped us figure out how to, find the ideal career path, and
Yeah, yeah.
then they could listen to episodes on what happens in those career paths.
But they can go back and listen to all of those now.
Yeah,
So
yeah, exactly. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it, and we'll be in touch.
thanks very much. If anybody wants to know about that ideal career framework, you can go to findingyoridealcareer.com, and all of that, the breakdown of how to do all that is there. It's a free pay. You don't have to subscribe or download anything. It's just findingyoridealcareer.com, and all that information is there.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. Have a good one.
You too. Thanks a million.
Well, that's it for this episode of the My Career Shop podcast. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you have a much better idea on how to find your ideal career path. If you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button, leave a review, and comment on who you want to hear from next. See you soon.